Here's a random thought that I'll be talking about. Do you feel as if you're a second-class citizen while you're out here doing your gig grind and hustle? We're going to talk about that and a couple other topics on this segment of The Gig Geezer. If this is your first time checking out The Gig Geezer, if you're a returning visitor of The Gig Geezer, thanks for coming by, and if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. It is Wednesday morning, April 24th, 2024, and I'm actually en route to a catering pickup. And this is another topic that I'm actually leading off with this particular topic among my random thoughts. So the catering order that I'm picking up is a very small order by catering standards. This order is all of $76.19, and it is paying $21.40. Now, normally I would ignore a catering order offer of $21.40, especially after having completed as many catering orders as I have on this particular app and a couple other apps since 2022. But this order actually fits into what I had talked about on this segment of The Gig Geezer, in which I shared some tips on order selection for catering orders whose value are $300 and more. And in that segment, I suggested that one should consider orders whose pay is at least 10% of the order size. Now, that's what I suggest, that's what I recommend. What you do is what you're going to do. This order, because it is paying $21.40, is actually 28% of the order size. And if this order had come across on another app, it would have paid probably in a range of $30 at a minimum, and it would have comprised about 40% of the order value. Now, regardless if it paid $30 or $21, for the size of the order, you can also make an argument that this would be a good order on an ordinary gig food delivery app like a DoorDash or Grubhub or Uber Eats. It's not a large, on DoorDash, it's not what used to be the large order opportunities in which order sizes of $100 or more. And on Uber Eats, for it to qualify as a large order, there has to be at least 25 items that it has to be on Uber Eats. Grubhub, I've never seen a large order, so I can't comment on what would qualify as a large order. I have had an order that paid in recent weeks. I have had an order that paid like $38, and it just had a really nice tip, and it was of some size. Probably would have qualified as a large order on the DoorDash app. So I'm actually just, it would be a stretch to say minutes away, but I'm not far away from the pickup location. All right, no great mystery there. As you can tell on the inset that I have a catering pickup from Krispy Kreme. A few dozen of donuts, which I kind of figured. Not my Krispy Kreme is not my cup of tea. Donuts are just too rich for me, man. And they don't really they just don't agree with my metabolism. But what I will say from a catering opportunity perspective is that one of my larger paying catering opportunities, I would say one that is in the top 5. In fact, it was mentioned on this segment of the Gig Geezer. In fact, that particular segment of the Gig Geezer was at the time a single day. It contributed to a single day high for me of more than $600 earned. That order from that location paid $336, and I drove all of maybe 2 minutes to the drop-off location. Not a bad opportunity, but we're less than 10 minutes away from the drop-off location for this catering order. And what I want to do is wrap up the thought that I'm starting out with this segment with catering opportunities. I mentioned also that with the smaller orders, they're going to pay at a minimum in the range between $20 and $30. Obviously, this one is paying in that minimum range. But if there's anything to take from it, is that you've got, with the catering order opportunities, at least on most of the apps, you do have chance to look at the order, at least size it up in terms of order size, dollar amount, how much it's going to pay, where it's going, the distance, things like that. The apps do give you sufficient time to make a pretty good decision, a fairly educated decision. It's not like on the DoorDash side when you've got, depending on if it's a stacked or a single order, anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds to make a decision. On Uber Eats, you got all of 10 seconds, and on Grubhub, you got maybe 5 seconds to make a decision. I'll say 10 seconds. But the catering apps do give you time to make decisions like that. And so hopefully what I'm sharing with you is just a good example of a lower paying order that does make sense. Now, moving on in thoughts. I mentioned in the teaser about, do you feel as if you're a second-class citizen? Well, this is actually my second time trying to put this together. I actually came across this topic on my news feed yesterday, April 23rd, 2024. And the article the article evoked a couple of trains of thoughts. The first train of thought was that of a writer, an actual reporter. As I've mentioned a number of times, my formal background is one of a newspaper reporter. My formal background is a degree in journalism. I was in print media for 15 years, of which 10 years were for newspapers. So the other train of thought is as of a gig worker, something that I've done now for the last 8 years. As a writer, this article was lacking. From a critical eye, it appeared that this guy gathered a lot of stuff, and then he kind of in my opinion kind of got brain locked as to what he would use given the space that he had. He probably was given a word limit, and so he's trying to put together what he think are the most important things, the most compelling things, and I think he missed the mark. But that said, I guess you could say the intent of the article was to bring attention to what gig workers feel, gig drivers like you, me, and others. What we're thinking about, what we deal with while we're out there. And one of those thoughts, according to the writer, is that gig workers feel as if they're treated like second-class citizens. If you go according to definition, a gig worker who is a second-class citizen may feel as if they're inferior, that they're denied rights, privileges, and even the respect that the prevailing class of people seem to enjoy and maybe exploit. Now, the biggest thing that I took from the article, though, is the lacking of respect. And then a secondary thought from that article would be exploitation. Drivers feeling as if they are being exploited by two types of people that the article describes: customers and the people who work in the stores. Now, I am almost at the drop-off location, so I'm going to resume this random thought in a few moments. All right, I just dropped off the catering order, but the reason why I am showing a picture of this building right here is because I mentioned about being a newspaper reporter, but this building right here was once occupied by a guy named Tank Black. And Tank Black was the agent to a number of... Tank was also a football coach. But that building was where a guy named Donnie Shell worked at one time. Donnie Shell is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Former free agent, South Carolina State alum, and member of the Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl championship teams. And I did a story on Donnie Shell the first year that I was in South Carolina. So that was a little over 30 years ago. So I just want to share that with y'all. That's just one of many places and obviously people whom I've dealt with in my time in the business. But back to the other thought, which is about drivers feeling as if they're second-class citizens. Now, I will go as far as to say this. The first thing that comes to mind with this is a lot of time, I have had people tell me this. I've seen other content creators see comments like this, and I've had other people to speak to me as if in a very condescending way. But one of the common things, one of the common put downs is, why don't you get a real job? Go get a real job. Okay. How do you define a real job? Now, if I were to use the example of a reporter, that for me was a labor of love. I would not consider that a job. That was something that I wanted to do from childhood. And I think a lot of professions, a lot of crafts in which you do something that's really your passion, you're not going to define it as a job. So are you going to tell me then that a real job is one in which is of financial necessity and something that you absolutely despise, you hate, you curse going there, you curse while you're there, you curse when you leave, you curse when you're going home, you curse when you're going to sleep, you curse that job day in and day out, and you look forward to the day that you hear that it burned down? But this is the mindset of some people when they look at gig workers, gig drivers. Now, along those lines, if folk look down on us that way, are we doing things that may earn their respect or command their respect? And what I mean by that, do you treat the delivery work, the last mile delivery work, do you treat this as a business? In the way you go about things, do you treat it as a business? And then, and treating it as a business, you kind of make it, you kind of turn it into an honorable line of work. I think part of the problem why gig drivers are looked down upon the way we are is because of the 98%. And that is, the 98% are people who do this stuff on the weekends or on the evenings. They're doing it after they get off of their job, their real job, their W-2, and they treat it in such a way. And as a result, someone like me, that 2% comes along, in which this is what I do, I'm numbered among the transgressors. That's just my thinking. Now, another thing is, you know, people watch, people talk, and what I'm getting at is, I believe that there is some jealousy and some acrimony. There's some genuine jealousy and some genuine acrimony towards gig workers, gig drivers, in terms of when they find out the money that can be made based on what you make of this. I know in my situation, if I were to go to a store or a restaurant and someone attempts to talk to me a certain way, two things come to mind. Number one, I'm too old to be talking to me like that. I'm just too old. I'm probably old enough to be their father or grandfather. And so therefore, you're not going to talk to me just any kind of way, because I'm not going to talk to you just any kind of way. Number two, when it comes to respect based on money earned, there's a very good chance that I make more money than the person who runs the place, and probably 2, 3, 4 employees, maybe 5 employees combined. So therefore, I may be tempted to look down on them. But I also realize, and again, the key word for me is tempted to look down on them. But I also realize that I need to treat them with a measure of respect, that in that knowing that there may be situations in which I really need them to help me out in a situation. And so if they remember me treating them with a certain degree of respect and dignity, they may remember that, and in turn do something on my behalf that they may not have done for another person. Now, the article talked of drivers lamenting or complaining of how the stores, in particular, when they're working the Walmart app, Spark, there would be people in the store who would trail them, and for the reasons or the suspicion of them, because of the reasons and suspicions of them may be engaging in theft. And so, or if they know that they're working the app, they just do it just to be fucking with them, because they know that the driver is pretty much at their mercy, because they could report the driver whether founded or not, and the driver could very well be deactivated from the app. And so they use that as a means of leverage on the driver. Same thing with customers. I think that if the article mentioned of the complaint of customers, in which how customers will, and this is something that this is I'm preaching to the choir if you're a gig driver, because I've also voiced this in numerous Gig Geezer segments. Customers will lie about orders missing, items missing. Customers, depending on which app, if the drivers are rated, will be trashed for reasons unknown and unfounded. And yet when you go to the app about it, the app does nothing. Then, according to the article, the app says that, well, we believe in particularly Instacart, saying, well, we go by the mantra that, hey, respect is given and respect is earned and all. Treat people as you want to be treated yourself. But yet, they do nothing. This is where I think the article lacks perspective. The article lacks really a true. I'll put it like this: if this were a newspaper story, and let's say that it was a news side story, a news side reporter trying to do a sports game story on Deadline, they would miss a lot of things. Likewise, there's the mindset of news side people that if a sports person were to do a cop shop story or some type of big event on Deadline for an A1 feature or A1 story, which would mean the front page, a sports person would lack perspective as well. Here's the thing about these stores saying that they're trailing the Spark or Walmart, the Spark or Instacart driver or shopper for suspicions of potential theft. Particularly with Walmart, we know of Walmart leaving markets in its entirety due to loss, prevention, and theft. So to put it on an Instacart or a small Walmart Spark person, that's not going to hold. That's not going to hold up. That's not going to hold up one bit. What I think it's a fair thing to say, though, is that many of the people that we encounter do probably look upon gig workers, gig drivers, as if we're a nuisance, an inconvenience. They don't understand what we really do. They don't care about what we do, and that we may be a threat to their job when we're not. Because, hey, look, if they're not in business, we don't have a place to pick up. So, again, these are just my random thoughts. And by the way, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer and any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up. Share my content among others, and I definitely welcome comments in the section below. Last thing I want to throw out there with my random thoughts. Now, there are those who's going to say that we need to get a real job. But for those of us who actually make this work, you know what? You don't need an advanced degree to make this work. You don't need years and years of experience to make this work. There's a lot of things that you don't need. This stuff does not require a lot. However, it's not for everybody. And so, with that, again, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer or in any other segment, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up. Share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm Inwood Lane. As always, may your grind and may your hustle continue.